This is it, the start of our first real project, a damaged Ducati Supersport, which we picked up for 8,000 euros. In the last video we managed to get it started, and we took off all the damaged parts, but underneath all of this mess there were a few surprises. That's why we needed the help from Ducati themselves. This is our start of the parts we're going to replace. We actually forgot to take off a pretty important part. So, let's take it off now. And that part was the whole front brake lever, which was absolutely demolished during the crash. This brake lever was only held on by 2 Allen key bolts, so it was pretty easy to remove. Now before we can fully remove the brake lever from the bike, we need to loosen up the brake hose from the lever, which as you can see is marked because it was torqued to spec. We just found out that the handlebar has been hit pretty hard in the crash and it's bent. I don't know if you can see it on video, but it's clearly bent. Now that our brake lever has been removed, we can start removing the next part, and that is the bent handlebar. This was also held in 2 Allen key bolts, which we had to fully take out because there was a little safety groove that you can see on the handlebar. The next 2 things to remove were the starter and the throttle control, but before we could get those off, we had to remove the end cap. After that, the throttle control splits up into 2 parts and slides off. Almost the same procedure happens for the starter, but this one has 2 bolts which you fully have to loosen up. Now that everything is off the handlebar here, you can clearly see that it's bent, as we told before. So we're going to have to replace it, because if you try to straighten it, the strength of the material will be lost. So there's no other option than to buy a new handlebar piece. The next thing on the list was to disconnect the starter from the main wire bundle. Now that we have finished our unfinished business, we can start the rebuilding part. This is our start of the parts we're going to replace. Inside this box is a brand new headlight bracket from Ducati, which has cost us a whopping 215 euros. And this is the main base to start to build everything on the front end. So, the only reasonable thing to do was to look up a manual and start building. The first step was to put on several clips where the bolts could screw into later. After that, we put in a rubber, which was later used by the outside temperature sensor. After the rubber was fitted, we had a little bracket that we weren't sure where to put, but after googling some part numbers, we found out where it went, so we installed it right away. On our previous broken bracket, we had this little dampening bolt left, so it had to be mounted somewhere on our new bracket. We also reused some of the old suspension rubbers for the headlight, so it doesn't vibrate too much while riding. Now that we've fully prepared the bracket, we can finally mount it on the bike. Because there's so much weight on the front end of the bike, it was held in by some pretty big torque screws. This also had to be pretty tight. Apparently there are 2 sides of clips, as you can see. I don't know if you can see it. This is a big one. This is a small one, so we fitted the small one on this, but bolt didn't fit, so apparently there's different clips, so be careful for that. Next up, we installed our temperature sensor in our rubber housing, and after that we started to take care of the whole sensor bundle and its bracket.
Because some clips on our sensor bracket were broken, we had to take them off and put some new ones on it. When we installed our sensor bracket, we made a pretty big mistake, and we will find out later in the video. But at this moment, we continued our work without even noticing the big mistake we made. Right now we're putting the sensors in their designated locations into the rubber. This process was pretty easy and fast because each sensor has their own slot into the rubber. After this, we focused our attention back onto the tilt sensor. This has its own little bracket where it has to be mounted onto. Now the only task remaining was to fit this tilt sensor in its place.
But now you're probably wondering why brands like Ducati fit a tilt sensor to a bike and why it's so important. In case of a crash, this sensor is actually pretty important. Because if it detects a lean angle of over 60 degrees, it automatically cuts the fuel, so there's less chance of a fire.
After using all of the parts we already had and reusing some old parts, we had to visit our local Ducati store for some help. Immediately when coming into the showroom, we were impressed by the beautiful bikes that were there. But we only had one job, and that was to get parts for our own bike. So we came prepared and we gave the mechanic all of the parts numbers he needed for the rest of the build. When the mechanic grabbed our parts, we took a little stroll in the showroom, where we were met by a special girl, a Ducati Panigale V4 Superleggera, where there are only 500 of in the whole world.
In these boxes is everything we need to finish our Ducati project. Headlights, bolts, nuts, brakes, everything you can think of, we have it all. So let's finish this build.
The first new piece we're going to put on the bike is a new handlebar piece, because the previous one took a pretty big hit in the accident, so it's not safe to use anymore. It was only held in by 2 Allen key bolts, so this was a pretty fast and straightforward job.
Because the other brake can't be repaired, we have no other choice than to put a whole new brake on it.
So we started unboxing our new brake, and after that we started aligning it on the handlebar.
As you can see, we have a little dent here. Also on the other side we have a little dent, so it's pretty easy to align these brakes.
After making sure both our levers were in the same position, we could start tightening them up for good. After we were done with the brakes, the next thing to do was the starter. This was super easy to install because of these 2 holes in the handlebar.
We are going to reuse our old starter because our new one hasn't arrived yet, but we need this plug because we need to plug everything in, so otherwise we'll have faults on the dash.
So, to install this starter, you just slide 2 pins into the holes that I just explained to you. After that, it's just 2 screws and then it's all done. After we tightened the bolts of the starter, we could move on to the next thing and last thing of this handlebar piece, which was the bar end. The bar end is pretty easy, it just slides in and expands as you tighten it. The next thing to do is plugging in our connections. which came from the new brake levers. When we were done with that, we started removing the plastic cap so we could start fitting our brake hoses. These were also super easy to fit because they have banjo ends and they just screw in with one big screw, but make sure they don't leak. After our handlebar was fully done, we could move on to the front end of the bike. This is going to change the whole bike. But first, we had to mount some suspension rubbers to absorb the vibrations and some clips before we could install the headlight.
Here we have it, our biggest expense of this build, the new Ducati headlight. It has cost us a big price tag of 648 euros, so pretty big piece of our budget went into this light, but we needed it because we didn't have one. This is the new updated version for the 2023 bike with daylight running lights. The previous one had like individual LEDs, this one is just one LED, like, and you can see it's pretty aggressive looking. So it will transform the bike, so let's put it on.
First we had to make sure all our cables were routed correctly behind the headlight. After that we could start pushing the headlight onto the metal studs. When the headlight was fully seated onto the metal studs, it was just a matter of putting these two clips with some washers on it and tightening everything up.
We've just finished putting on our headlight. Now, before we can test it, we have to put on our instrument panel. This is probably the most important piece of our bike because this is the whole mind behind it, except for the ECU. But yeah, for the moment everything in the front is bolted on. The handlebar is fixed, the headlight's fixed. So let's put this one on and then the whole front end is done except for the fairings.
Us thinking this was the last thing we had to put on for that day made us really happy. But soon we started realizing we made a big mistake. So let's pause for a minute. Apparently this cable is too short, but that's because of a mistake we made earlier on in the video. This cable has to go straight into the head unit, so it's crucial we get this cable right into the head unit. So that leaves us with only one option, and that's to strip the whole front end again until we can reroute all the sensors and wires so this wire gets more space. But that will be pretty boring to watch. So to save you guys some time, I will fast forward the next part until we have it all together again.
After a long period of trying to get our instrument cluster on, we've finally done it. As you can see, it's finally on. Our headlight is on. So now there only remains one thing, and that's to turn the ignition and see if our light works. 3, 2, 1. It works. It all works. What do you think, guys? I think it looks pretty good. Our instrument cluster works, our headlight works. Let's see if our high beams work. They work. Full beam. They work as well. Alright, now it's only the fairings left to do. Then this baby can go back on the road. Unfortunately, this video is already coming to its end. But on the positive side, I think we got a lot done today. We fitted the instrument cluster, we fitted the headlight, we fixed our handlebar, we fitted the brake, starter, everything. So yeah, I think in the next video we can probably start with the fairings. So if you want to see more about that, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.